Now, even though our speaker does not need an introduction, I thought I would get up and introduce her anyway, so she didn't have to do it for herself. Anyway, Debra Bryant is a practitioner here at our center, as you all know, is inspiring, is funny, is just free, a free spirit, and who really knows principle. And so my experience of her over these last months has just been one of just real gratitude for having her perspective. And I know that she really shares that with all of us in a very unique way. And the accent is perfect addition. So please help me welcome Debra Bryant.
Good morning. Good morning. So life is a boomerang. When this inspiration first came through and I knew my talk was going to be called Life's a Boomerang, I got really excited. And I'm like, Clint, my next talk's going to be called Life's a Boomerang. And I'm going to find a boomerang and I'm going to stand up there and I'm going to throw the boomerang. And everybody's going to really get it and it's going to be great. And he looks at me and says, you're kidding, aren't you? I know, it's going to be great. I can see it now. Now, luckily, Clint is a safety guy at Los Alamos. And so safety is really big for him, not as much for me. We often find ourselves in these interesting conversations about safety. So anyway, he said, Debra, it's going to go through the glass. People. Anyway, so I'm not going to throw it. But I do invite you to use the visual of the boomerang as, you know, we hear the message this morning. I think most of us, when we think about the boomerang, think about the Australian Aborigines who use it as a hunting stick. And one of the main ways they use it is they have a lot of tall grasses and they'll throw it over the grass and it kind of stirs up the small mammals and the birds and, you know, helps them in their hunting. Interestingly, a boomerang was actually found in the tomb of King Tutankhamun, which was really kind of interesting 3,000 years ago. Okay. Florence Skinner, I think, sums it up. The game of life is like the game of the boomerang. Deeds and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. So I think the boomerang principle is you reap that which you sow, which of course is our philosophy. So my talk this morning is called Life's a Boomerang, the spiritual truth of the boomerang as seen through the eyes of a religious scientist. And who are religious scientists? We are. We are. And we're going to be hearing that term a lot because Reverend Duchess is a devout religious scientist. Ernest Holmes called our philosophy science of mind, and he called our denomination religious science, hence religious scientists, because he believed that there were principles in our tradition that are proven, spiritual principles. Ernest says, when a theory is proven to be correct, a principle is announced. Therefore, science is the knowledge of facts based upon some proven principles. So some very basic principles that he shared with us as the foundation of our teaching. If you listen to his talks, always he says, there is a power for good in the universe. This power is available to us. We need not go in search of it, for it is closer than our very breath. He always refers to Jesus and says, it is done unto you as you believe. And so that's what we call the law, the principle of the law. Just like the boomerang. You throw it out, you get it back. What else he teaches us, and Lynn had a beautiful reading about that this morning, is that at the center of who and what we are, there is a place that only knows peace, that only knows love, that sees only through the eyes of love, that hears only through the ears of love. This place within us that knows no worry, knows no fear, knows no problem, because this place deep within us has never been wounded. Corey Terry Baum, I love what she says. She says, there is no pit deeper than God's love. And so that's another principle in our tradition, that there is this place deep within us that only knows peace. Another principle that Ernest teaches us is an equation. I think we hear a lot of change your thinking, change your life, but that's an incomplete statement. What Ernest teaches us is thought plus belief equals manifestation, equals result. And that belief always trumps thought. What truly manifests in my life is what I believe about myself at the deepest level. Ernest says, a conscious knowledge of this piece, coupled with definite use of the law of mind, gives to each the possibility of freedom from the bondage of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. And then I love this. He says, the individual who has the most power is the one who has the greatest realization of the divine presence and to whom this means the most as an active principle in their life. And I really like that he uses that word realization. Because I don't know about you, but to begin my spiritual path, I gained a lot of knowledge. I was studying, I was going to workshops, but I wasn't really realizing it. Wisdom is knowledge realized. Wisdom is knowledge realized. And how we realize the knowledge is through spiritual practice. I don't actually think we get to know that place that only knows peace without spiritual practice. I think that's really how we get to have that knowledge realized. Our beliefs. I'm going to share a few things. There are many things I could say about the philosophy of the boomerang, and I was just talking to Jim, and I think I'm going to be talking possibly January 3rd, and I'm going to do Life is a Boomerang Part 2 and follow it up with a workshop. But I'd like to talk a little bit about beliefs and the I ams. I see this amazing therapist, and about a month ago, she said, okay, write I am, and just write as many things as you can. And so then we looked, and I smiled at all the positive ones. And then she invited me to write above every negative one the polar opposite of that belief. And that was great. And then she said, okay, now I want you to pick some and write an affirmation. Well, there were 12. And she said, you really need, I said, I need this many. So I picked 12. And she invited me to do it for 30 days. Neuroscientists teach us that it takes 30 days to change a neural pathway, to install a new belief system, to have a new habit. And I know for me, that's where I fall short. You know, I go to workshops, I hear all of this great stuff, and yeah, I'll do that for 30 days. Maybe I make it 7. Maybe if it's really inspiring, I make it 10. But I committed this time I was going to do 30. Now, what has been very helpful, 33 cents, beads from across there, Party City. So I have this around my gear stick, and in my car, I say my affirmation. That's what I do in my car, is I say my affirmation. And that's all I've been doing that now for at least a month. And I want to share a quick story about how I've seen a huge difference in the manifestation about what I'm putting out and what I'm getting back. I spoke once about the 3 C's. Compare, criticize, complain. And for me, one of the things that I do sometimes, I don't know about you, but I compare. I compare myself to others. And when I put out compare, what I get back is despair. What I get back is feeling inferior. What I get back is not being good enough. What I get back is not being worthy. So last week I showed up here, really, I walked in and I was like, oh man, my picture's going to be up there next week. I'm excited to talk. So I come in, and as the service went on, I watched myself completely diminish in response to Greg's bigness, allness, and greatness. And by the time we left here, I said to Clint, I don't want to talk next week. I'm going to have nothing to say. Nobody's going to come. Nobody's going to clap. I'm going to suck. Maybe I need to find somebody else to talk. So I did this for about 10 minutes, and I caught myself. 10 minutes. And I caught myself, and I was like, do you really want to put this out there? Well, if we think about the antidotes, the antidote to compare is to appreciate. So I said to myself, well, how could I appreciate? Well, how I could appreciate, and it was so clear, you will go back and you will do his workshop this afternoon. And you will allow his light, his bigness, his allness to mirror that back in you. And the moment I made that decision, my mind was free, you know. And so I share that as an example of the power of affirmations. You know, last year, I would have mulled on that for days, if not weeks. Years ago, it would have been weeks. But I worked it through in less than an hour. And I know that that's the power of spiritual practice. It's the power of affirmations. Another thing that I think is really important when we're thinking about what do we want to throw out there is creating intentions. How do I start my day? So a couple of weeks ago, it was early in the morning, and I was thinking to myself, well, you haven't done your spiritual practice for a few days. And then I justified it. Well, you know, you have to be at work early. I mean, really, it's okay. And then I was like, that's bullshit. You know, you have not been doing your spiritual practice for days because you are so engrossed in that spy novel that you're reading. And that is how you're starting your day. So I don't know about you, but what I often do when I have those moments is I open up a book. This is exactly what happened. So I went Everyday Grace, Marianne Williamson, happened to be by my bed. I opened it up, and this is what I got. According to A Course in Miracles, 5 minutes spent with God's Spirit in the morning guarantees He will be in charge of our thought forms throughout the day. Each morning we can begin with spiritual confidence, surrendering to God's will and praying that our eyes be open to the miracles He has planned for us. Each day can be a glorious canvas painted by the hand of God, and we pray for eyes with which to see it. Every morning, visualize and pray for divine right order. Allow yourself to imagine the life you long to experience. Then bless that image and surround it with light. Now you can leave the house smiling because you've placed your future in the hands of God. You've helped set the universe on a harmonious trajectory. Isn't that pretty? Yeah, I thought that was a really beautiful reminder of, you know, how do I want to start my day? So I just invite us, you know, to really contemplate the importance of, in the morning, throwing out the intention of my day. Ernest also talks about walking with an expectancy of good. Because I know for myself, when I set that intention, it is amazing. It is amazing what comes back to me. So, I think if we can think about the I ams we say to ourselves, if we can create an intention. Something else I'd like us to contemplate for a moment is the stories we tell ourselves. Anybody tell stories? So I'd like to share with you, I'm very attached to holding my boomerang, but I just encourage you just to see it as a visual tool. So I want to share with you a poem from Chicken Soup from the Soul by Valerie Cox. It's called The Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between while she tried to ignore it to avoid a scene. She read, munched cookies, and watched the clock as the gutsy cook thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve, and he's also rude. Why, he doesn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she had been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat, then sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. And when I read that, I laughed because I don't know about you, but sometimes I get so convinced that my stories are real. Anybody else do that? So convinced my stories are real. And afterwards, they can be completely ludicrous. And the other thing that I think is important about stories, one of the things Clint and I are doing with each other is just calling each other when we're starting a story. Because what I notice is every time I tell a story, every time I throw that story out, it gets more power. You know, it gets much more power every time I throw it out. So I really invite us to check out our stories, to just check them out. And sometimes it's really good to have a reality check with somebody else. Something else that I've been contemplating when I've been thinking about throwing things out there. As most of us know, in our tradition, we have a 5-step prayer, spiritual mind treatment. Step 1, God is all there is. Step 2, I am one. I am an individualized presence in the allness of God. Step 3 is when we speak our word, when we put whatever it is out there. Step 4 is gratitude. And one of the beautiful things about our treatment and why we talk about it in the present is when we talk about gratitude, we talk about it as if it already is. So when we speak our word, we speak in the present, claiming it in this moment, allowing it to come in, but very much being grateful that it already is. And then we have what I actually believe is the toughest step. Step 5, letting go. I let go and I let God. And I don't know about you, but that is often the hardest one for me. I ordered something online this week from Amazon, and then when I pressed confirm, I was like, okay, that's great, it'll show back up. And I was thinking about that and the difference between that and when I sometimes say a prayer. That I have much more, sometimes, faith in Amazon's ability to come through than I do in my own. Because I think, you know, and in my working with people, I think this is where we sometimes get a little unstuck. We say a prayer, we do all of that wonderful things, we let it go, and then we sneak back and get it out of God's inbox. And we mull it over, and then we put it back in, and we mull it over, and we put it back in. And so, and I think that's where working with a practitioner, working with somebody who is a spiritual guide, I know has been very helpful for me in my life about learning to let go. Learning that once I put it out there, I trust that it's going to come back to me. So something about the boomerang principle is we cannot predict when whatever it is going to come back to us. I know sometimes I get frustrated because I want instant gratification. And I think we need to remember that in God there actually is no time. That God doesn't have time. Time is a man-made thing. And I'm often reminded by that when I think about, well, like I was thinking last night when we were doing Halloween, you know, it's 8 o'clock here, it's already Sunday in England. I mean, so we really, you know, time is something that we have made up. Something else I think is important when we're thinking about the boomerang principle is not weighing it down with expectations. Is deciding that I know how it's supposed to look. Because what I found, and I'm sure you've probably found this too, is when I can truly let something go, when I can step back, let it go, and let God, God's why, God's what comes back to me, is so much greater than anything I could ever visualize for myself. So I think that's important too. And I think too, on that same note, you know, the more we detach from the outcome, the more we practice that, the better our game of the boomerang will be. You know, it's just principle. It's just principle. I'd like to give you a little bit of homework. I work with kids, and so, not that I give them homework, but that's what's coming to my mind. And how life would be different if we all thought about this acronym that I'm going to share with you and committed to doing it. Our words have so much power. Our words have so much power. So before we speak, if we were to think, T, is it true? Do I unequivocally know that whatever is going to come out of my mouth, do I believe it's true? H, is it helpful? Is what I'm going to say helpful to myself, helpful to those around me? I, is it inspiring? Is what I'm going to say inspiring? N, and I think this is a really good one, is it necessary? Is what I am about to say, does it need to be said? Has it already been said? Does it need to be said? And then, of course, my very favorite is the last one. K, is it kind? Is what I'm about to say kind? So if we could do that, you know, if before we speak, we could think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And I don't know about you, but I'd be saying a lot less. So, to recap what I've been talking about and thinking about how can we have more conscious control over that which we throw out. By paying attention to the I ams. Maybe do that little practice that my therapist had me do. Get some beads, you know. Like I said, neuroscientists say it takes 30 days to change a neural pathway, to install a new belief. So work with some new I ams. Check out your intention every morning. What are you putting out into the world about how this day is going to look? What are you putting out there? And then the stories, you know. Maybe ask your friends, because that's what I've had to do with a few of my friends. I have a couple of dear friends here who also know that I'm very good at this storytelling. You know, I elaborate it, and sometimes it has nothing to do with truth. So invite others to help you with your storytelling. And then the last one is, when you put something out there, let it go. Release it, let it go, and let God. Let God. And so I think that's the beautiful principle of the boomerang. Let it go and let God. So I love you guys. And so it is. Thank you.